So the software also has some processing capabilities. There's background subtraction, gain compensation, spectral filtering, which is more appropriate in ultraviolet fluorescence applications where you use a linear PMT to extract spectral information about the event, and 2D filtering, which is more of a sort of appropriate for particle applications. These processing functions are configured in these menus here. You can see you can configure background subtraction, gain compensation, where you can set the relative offset of each channel, the gain of each channel, so that you can normalize the responsivity across the array. So here you can do it for the 32 channels, first 32, and here the second 32. 0 means there's no change from nominal, so you can increase it plus or minus a fixed percentage. I had mentioned the spectral filtering. This is one of the menus to set it up. It's not really appropriate for this particular demonstration, but you can see there's various things you can do here. Defining flags and product terms, so you're actually implementing a logic function on various channels, comparing them to some fixed values or other channels, and then using that information to determine whether the event should be acquired or not. Basically, this little LED here would indicate that the event was, there was a match in the filter. Similarly, we have 2D filtering, which is done over a spatial area, and you can set that here. 4x4 matrix or an 8x8 matrix. There's different configurations, there's different logic functions that can be implemented, and based on a match to the filter or not, the data will be logged or not logged, or flagged or not flagged. This functionality is explained more in great detail in the manual. Back under the system menu, we have a general purpose output, which can be configured. This is an output on the front panel of the hardware. You can set it to generate a signal every time there is a trigger signal, or every time there's an event, or a match to the filter, in fact, and you can delay it and control its period. There's also, you can put out a fixed frequency clock that's locked to the system. There's some other capability here depending on what kind of hardware options are installed in the system. We also have a feature called cross-bank triggering, which is a way to trigger the banks using different delay and integration periods. This is also useful more or less in ultraviolet fluorescence applications. And there's a couple of other things here. There's a delay module which could be installed in the hardware, which will selectively delay each channel in the system by up to 100 or even 200 nanoseconds. If that module is in place, this will become non-grayed out. You can select it and adjust it. It's very useful when you have a trigger signal that actually has arrived after the occurrence of the event. We also have a trigger processor card, which is also explained in the manual, and its usefulness is more in ultraviolet fluorescence applications. There's a couple of utilities we have. You can generate a diagnostic report. System can be calibrated, which most often is not unnecessary. And we have this thing called a log file converter, which will take the files that are created here when they're logged and convert them into a text file. That's very useful if you actually want to read the data that's been accumulated. Most of the files that are generated, or I should say all of the files that are generated by this system, are in a very compact binary form. And they're readable by our log file viewer or by a user's custom application where the file can be parsed to extract the individual event data. We also have this add option utility here, which allows you to add certain software options to the system that were not originally shipped with the system. That's pretty convenient if someone wants to upgrade their data acquisition system. Lastly, we have this help menu, which really just tells you what the hardware configuration is here, IQSP582. We don't have a delay module installed. We don't have a trigger processor installed. We do have a high voltage installed, and we do have the buffer memory installed. And then there's some information about the firmware. The firmware can be updated in the field, and sometimes it's necessary to update the firmware to get the latest features that are available in the system. We can you can save your configuration information to a separate file, and you can open it so it can remember the last setup. It will also remember what was configured under the sensor interface board configuration menu. So that concludes our software demonstration.